The wire is already staged at $47 million across 3 jurisdictions, and all that remains is your signature. No alarms, no urgency, no chaos, just a quiet approval sitting inside a system designed to move money faster than thought. You scroll, not because you doubt it, but because this is what power now feels like, reduced to a line item on a screen. And when you finally sign, nothing dramatic happens. No celebration, no sound, only a transfer that begins moving through systems you will never see directly. It passes through Luxembourg first, then the Channel Islands, then Singapore, each step stripping visibility while preserving motion. To any outsider, nothing has happened, but inside the structure, everything has already changed ownership without friction. You do not think about it as money anymore, because at this level, money is no longer stored. It is routed, segmented, and reassembled. And somewhere far from your attention, compliance has already signed off, because every rule was satisfied before you even arrived at the moment. This is the part no one talks about, not because it is secret, but because it is too technical to feel real to most people. You are not breaking rules. You are operating inside them with precision that turns complexity into invisibility. And as the screen goes dark, the only thing left is the realization that what just happened was not exceptional at all. It is routine, repeated every day, across systems you have never seen, by people you will never meet, moving sums you will never touch. There is an entire financial world operating beneath what most people call banking, and you are only now beginning to see the outline of it, where movement replaces visibility and silence replaces explanation, leaving you with how far does it go?
You do not realize it at first, but the first layer of hiding is not offshore accounts or private banks. It is the ordinary systems you already use every day. It begins with a checking account, where money arrives and quietly disappears into rent, bills, and obligations before you ever have time to think about what it could become. This is the first form of hiding, not from the government, but from awareness itself. Then comes the 401k, the Roth IRA, the high-yield savings account, systems that feel like storage, but are actually time-based illusions, where money is moved out of reach of impulse and into rules you agreed to without reading. You think you are saving, but what is really happening is structure taking over decision-making on your behalf. And slowly, without noticing, you begin to understand that tax codes are not punishments, but instruction manuals for behavior, written in language most people never attempt to read. The difference between people who struggle and people who accumulate is not intelligence. It is whether they treat those rules as invisible or as something to be studied. And once you start seeing it this way, even simple accounts stop feeling simple, because every one of them is a different way of hiding money from inefficiency, from taxes, and from yourself. At the surface level, it looks like personal finance, budgeting apps, retirement contributions, small automated transfers happening in the background of your life. But underneath, it is something more fundamental, a quiet separation between what you earn and what you actually control. And as that separation grows, you begin to notice a shift, not in your income, but in your awareness of where it actually goes and why it was never really yours in the first place. You start to notice something subtle when income stops behaving like income and starts behaving like structure. It is no longer just about how much you earn, but about how that earning is classified, routed, and reported. This is where LLCs begin to appear, not as complex legal ideas, but as simple containers that separate you from the money you generate. S corporations, consulting entities, and small business structures quietly shift the meaning of income itself. Expenses become flexible, deductions become strategy, and what once felt like personal spending starts to look like positioning. You are no longer simply working for money. You are beginning to architect how money recognizes you in return. There is a quiet moral tension here, because the same structure that protects efficiency can also blur the line between necessity and optimization. You begin to understand that tax asymmetry is not an accident, but a design, and you are now learning how to move inside it. And still, this is only the beginning layer, the part most people mistake for sophistication, when in reality it is just entry-level structure. The real distance between working and wealth has not even started to open yet. And once you see it clearly, it becomes impossible to unsee how income is no longer a paycheck, but a system that can be redesigned. You start noticing how different forms of money carry different rules, how $1 earned as salary behaves differently than $1 earned through equity or ownership, and how that difference quietly compounds over time in ways most people never measure. And this is where the shift begins, not in how much you earn, but in how you think about what earning actually is at its core, moving forward into a completely different way of seeing income.
You start to notice that at higher levels, ownership itself becomes something people quietly step away from. Trusts begin to appear not as legal complexity, but as distance between you and what you own. Depreciation, real estate exchanges, private funds, and donor-advised structures all serve the same quiet function of reshaping visibility into abstraction. At this point, wealth is no longer about holding assets directly, but about positioning them inside systems that legally separate control from appearance. You begin to understand the phrase people use quietly in conversations you are not always invited into, that you stop owning things and start owning structures. And as that shift happens, something unexpected follows. Not excitement, but distance. The more structured wealth becomes, the more relationships begin to feel simplified, even reduced, as if fewer people can meaningfully understand the world you are operating in. There is a quiet withdrawal that happens here, not emotional at first, but practical, as conversations about money, work, and life start to drift out of alignment. You still live in the same world, but it no longer responds to you in the same way. And that is where the real transition begins. Not in numbers, but in the space between people, structure, and understanding. Trust structures hold assets quietly across generations, while you hold less and less in your personal name and more inside legal frameworks designed to outlive you. Eventually, even access becomes filtered, through advisors, through entities, through systems that speak a language you once had to learn and now simply operate within without question. And in that quiet separation, wealth stops feeling like possession and starts feeling like infrastructure that continues, whether you are watching it or not at all. Now, you begin to realize that once wealth reaches a certain point, geography stops being a place and starts becoming a tool. Countries are no longer just locations on a map, but different sets of rules, different tax environments, different legal temperatures that determine how value behaves. Offshore entities appear not as shadowy concepts, but as simple responses to imbalance. International trusts, private banking networks, and carefully chosen domiciles are not about hiding in the dark, but about moving through systems that were never designed to operate in isolation. This is where jurisdictional arbitrage becomes a quiet language spoken between professionals, where the same asset can legally exist in multiple interpretations, depending on where it is being viewed from. And slowly, the idea of where your money is stops making sense in a traditional way. It is no longer stored in accounts, but distributed across legal frameworks that each recognize a different version of the same reality. You start to see geography itself as part of the architecture of wealth, where moving across borders is less about travel and more about shifting rule sets. And the scale begins to feel almost abstract, because what once felt like banking now feels like navigating systems layered on top of systems. There is a kind of quiet exclusivity to it, not because it is hidden, but because it requires a level of coordination. At a certain point, wealth stops behaving like something you experience and starts behaving like something that simply continues. The systems become automated, the decisions delegated, and what once required attention
now runs through structures designed to sustain themselves. Family offices begin to replace personal involvement, foundations begin to carry intention across time, and dynasty planning shifts the focus away from life and toward generations that have not yet been born. And slowly, the emotional relationship to money changes in a way that is hard to explain unless you have seen it from the inside. It stops feeling like gain or loss and starts feeling like maintenance of something that no longer depends on your presence. This is where identity begins to blur, because your role is no longer defined by what you earn or even what you own, but by what you have already set in motion. Purpose becomes less about accumulation and more about continuity, ensuring that structures remain stable long after individual decisions stop mattering. And in that shift, something subtle happens to relationships as well. Conversations that once revolved around shared struggle or ambition begin to feel distant, almost incompatible, as if they are happening in different timelines of experience. Time itself feels different here. Not faster or slower, but distributed, stretched across systems that outlive your immediate attention. It is easy to forget where this all actually begins, because nothing about it feels significant at the start. A first paycheck lands in a checking account, small enough that it feels more like permission to continue working than a foundation for anything else. You see the number, you feel the relief, and then almost immediately it begins to disappear into obligations you barely had time to understand. Rent, food, small decisions that feel personal, but are already structured by systems that were in place long before you arrived. And somewhere inside that ordinary moment, the entire architecture quietly begins. A contribution slider appears in a retirement account, simple and forgettable, something you adjust once and rarely revisit. A tax form asks questions that feel procedural, not philosophical. A savings account accumulates slowly, without ceremony, as if it is just waiting for life to happen. But these are the first levers, the smallest points of control that determine how money moves when you are not paying attention. And most people never recognize them as levers at all. Later, when the systems become larger, when structures begin to span entities, jurisdictions, and generations, it becomes almost disorienting to realize that it all still traces back to these early, almost invisible decisions. The same logic that governs advanced wealth architecture is present in its simplest form at the beginning, only smaller, quieter, easier to ignore. That is the part most people miss, not because it is hidden, but because it does not look powerful enough to matter. And yet everything that follows is built on that exact foundation. Every structure, every optimization, every layer of separation and design begins with the moment someone decides to engage with the system instead of ignoring it. A first form filled out, a first percentage adjusted, a first account opened without fully understanding what it could become. And when you look back far enough, it becomes clear that nothing was ever truly sudden. The empire was never built in a moment of scale. It was built in the decision to notice the smallest lever and to learn how to move it, even when it still looked insignificant.